Freedom for your life is like water for fish, air for birds, abundance for the wild animals. Be ready to die with it rather than live without it. When you have sacrificed all for it and have won freedom, you have lost nothing, but gained everything. Hungarian poet and revolutionary Pál Bozai. In 1848, Europe was swept by a tidal wave of nationalistic and liberal revolutions, heralding what was commonly referred to as the springtime of the people. The revolution started in Palermo and Naples, before spreading to Paris on February 23rd, leading to the abdication of Louis-Philippe and the proclamation of the Second French Republic. On March 13th, the revolutionary fervour reached Vienna, the capital of the mighty Austrian Empire. Clemens von Metternich was ousted from office, and Emperor Ferdinand V, under duress, pledged to grant Austria a free press and a constitution. It was these revolutions in Paris and Vienna that set off a chain reaction in Hungary, led by national liberal-minded revolutionaries who sought national independence, civic democracy, and bourgeois liberalism. The revolution was surprisingly bloodless, and it seemed as if Hungary was on the brink of achieving its goals. However, their hopes were short-lived. Following the suppression of the turmoil in other territories, Vienna used its military might against the revolution. This led to the Hungarian War of Independence. The Habsburg Empire, a vast and diverse land of varied cultures, languages, and religions, was made up of numerous kingdoms and territories, including Hungary, Austria, Bohemia, Croatia, and others. Hungary held a pivotal position in this sprawling empire, as it was a semi-autonomous kingdom with its own parliament and legal system. With a population of over 14 million people, Hungary and Transylvania held a significant status within the empire, and the traditional upper class was made up of wealthy nobles, magnates, and prelates. However, the emergence of a new middle class, including liberal nobles, intellectuals, and the bourgeoisie, began to alter the political and economic landscape. The majority of the populace, consisting of craftsmen, workers, and the peasantry, awaited reforms such as the end of serfdom and the rise of democracy. Despite agriculture's dominance of the economy, industry remained relatively small compared to the rest of the Habsburg Empire. In the 1820s, a new kind of Hungarian demand emerged, one that was marked by a desire for cultural, economic, and liberal reforms. This period of change and progress was brought about by a generation of forward-thinking individuals, many of whom came from the upper nobility. The years between 1825 and 1832 saw a wave of reform culminating in the last Diet of the States General, which took place just before the 1848 revolution. Croatia was a unique case within the Hungarian crown lands. Despite being subject to the authority of the Ban, a civil governor appointed by the Habsburg monarch, it enjoyed significant autonomy with its own diet, the Saber. General Josip Jelačić, the Ban, was a powerful national figure who, along with many members of the Croatian political class, did not want to align with the Hungarians. The Croats, Slovaks, Serbs, and Romanians were experiencing their own nationalist awakenings and were unhappy with the prospect of remaining part of Hungary. Moreover, imperial agents were working to sow discord between the country's various ethnic minorities and the Hungarian majority. Already before 1848, Vienna sent all Hungarian conscripts to other provinces of the empire, Galicia, Bohemia, Slovenia, and northern Italy, and they brought foreign nationalities to form border guard regiments. When news of the revolution in Paris reached Hungary, it prompted Lajos Kossuth, a famous national politician and gifted orator, to introduce his liberal radical program at the Pozsonyi Diet. The leaders of the revolution crafted the renowned 12 points, which were a testament to the Hungarian people's will. The 12 points, consisting of a concise 69 words, demanded freedom of the press, an end to censorship, and equal rights for all. Each point was met with resistance from Vienna's absolutist institutions and administration, but with the weakening of Vienna by the ongoing revolution and dire state of the monarchy's finances, Hungary had the upper hand. The young poet Sándor Petőfi, only 25 years old, penned the famous and flamboyant national song. The following day, the young revolutionaries, bolstered by an ever-growing crowd, printed the poem and the 12 points without authorization from the censor. The Pozsony Diet witnessed a political earthquake as Kossuth's party decimated the conservative opposition in both chambers. Wealthy circles were especially vulnerable to scare tactics, and rumors of a peasant army led by Petőfi marching on the Diet played a role in their defeat. Under mounting pressure, the emperor eventually caved in, and with the mediation of the sympathetic Palatine Stephen, he ratified the crucial laws of the Hungarian Diet. These laws, known as the April Laws, validated the revolutionary achievements and allowed for the formation of a Hungarian government headed by Count Lajos Batthyány. On the 11th of April, the Diet was dissolved forever, and the National Assembly, consisting of nobles, the bourgeoisie, and wealthy peasants, was established through direct suffrage. Hungary underwent a significant transformation. It became a constitutional parliamentary monarchy, although the Austrian emperor still held the title of King of Hungary. The first National Assembly opened on the 5th of July, consisting mainly of provincial nobility who had been elected in a general election. However, the national ideal also continued to gain momentum, and ethnic minorities were becoming increasingly aware of their own identities. The repercussions of the national Slovak movement in Upper Hungary, the Serbian push for autonomy, and the Romanian movements were felt throughout the Austro-Hungarian conflict. Even the Transylvanian Saxons, who were better off than the Romanians, were opposed to union with Hungary. The Croatian issue was the most significant of them all. Jelačić, the Ban of Croatia, summoned the Sabor and rejected negotiations with the Palatine. This move favoured Vienna's interests, as the Austrian government provided Zagreb with the necessary funds to arm itself, with the goal of crushing the Hungarian Revolution and its bid for independence. The fatherland is in danger. National message by Lajos Kossuth. Austria had never been supportive of Hungary's bid for independence, but had been unable to stop it. However, Austria had recently gained back some of its lost confidence. General József Radetzky led the Austrian army to victory at Kustozza on July 25th, followed by the reconquest of Milan in August. Order was also restored in Prague, where Prince Alfred Windischgratz had crushed the 16th of June Czech uprising, and in Paris, where the June barricades had fallen. Austria was feeling strong, and it was time to play the Croatian card against Hungary. When Jelačić occupied Fiume, which Hungary considered its port to the sea, Hungary sped up preparations for war. A Hungarian national army was established. Legislation was passed to recruit 200,000 soldiers and provide 42 million in subsidies. They also bought armament and equipment factories, broadened political and social rights, and increased patriotic propaganda. The government understood that Croatia posed a significant danger. Major General Count Adam Telecki was assigned command over a 4,000-strong army and moved towards the Murakos region. War broke out on September 11th. On that day, General Jelačić's army crossed the Croat frontier and began their march into Hungary. Faced with an army significantly larger than his own, Telecki ordered a general retreat. Though Austria had not yet officially joined the conflict and was still in negotiation with Budapest, Jelačić's war was clearly aligned with Vienna's interests. In the midst of the conflict, the Palatine attempted to meet with Jelačić, hoping to negotiate a resolution. However, when Jelačić refused to meet, the Palatine was unwilling to lead the rebellion and transferred his command to Lieutenant General János Móga before leaving for Vienna. The main Hungarian army was positioned near the village of Pákozd, stationed on the Transdanubian hills. It was here, on the morning of September 29, that they encountered Jelačić and his troops, setting the stage for a significant battle that would have far-reaching consequences. "Sir, give us rifles, give us bayonets, and we will follow you," Croatian soldiers during the battle. Jelačić commanded a formidable force comprising over 51,000 soldiers, nearly 2,000 horses, and 48 artillery pieces, outnumbering the Hungarian army positioned between Pákozd and Székesfehérvár. On the northern hills stood the Hungarian army, led by Lieutenant General János Móga, who commanded a force of more than 17,500 soldiers, with 102 infantry companies, 15 cavalry companies, and 46 artillery pieces. Móga positioned his troops strategically, with the Hungarian right flank positioned on the hills between Patka and Pákozd, where Lieutenant Colonel Josef Milpok commanded more than a third of the infantry, around 6,600 troops, including 2 battalions of line infantry and 8 guns. The Hungarian troops on this flank were strategically positioned along the road to Lovaspereni, with their right wing leaning on the marshes from Patka to protect against encircling. The centre was commanded by Major General Franz Holtscher, where Móga placed more than half of his artillery, with 28 guns. The left wing, comprising 2,600 troops, was commanded by Colonel Mihaira Pashi, deployed on the southern shore of Lake Velence to prevent encircling. The reserve at Velence comprised a battalion of line infantry, a battalion of Honveds, and 3 battalions of volunteers with 400 hussars led by Teleki. Móga used only 10,444 soldiers and 36 cannons, as the left wing acted as a reserve. In the dead of night, a Hungarian envoy was sent to Jelačić's camp to urge him to call off the attack. However, the Ban was unyielding, and by late the following morning, his troops had already approached Pákozd. Major General Johann Kempen von Fichtenstam led the Croatian left wing, consisting of 15,389 soldiers. The Schmidl Division, commanded by Jelačić, consisted of 20,961 troops and made up the centre. The right wing was led by Hartlieb and consisted of 14,108 soldiers, lagging behind the other 2 divisions due to a delayed departure. Around 9:30 a.m., the vanguard of the 2 armies clashed on the Croatian left. Captain Rocknik, leading 2 units of Saracen skirmishers, engaged in a fierce firefight with the Kekskamet company of the 2nd Pest Battalion. Rocknik quickly informed his brigade commander, General Josef Neustatter, that without reinforcements he would not be able to hold his position. Kempen ordered Neustatter to dispatch 2 companies of Leopold's battalion to support the Saracenas. As the battle raged on, more Croats advanced into the valley, where another company of the 2nd Pest Battalion fought fiercely against them for over an hour. The intense fighting led to a shortage of ammunition for the Hungarian infantry. Major Imre Ivanka, who commanded this wing, personally intervened to prevent his troops from retreating, ensuring they received additional supplies of artillery. In the middle of the battle, the Croats abandoned their attempts to carry out another direct assault against the Hungarian troops, opting instead to surround them. Ivanka ordered a battalion led by Major Richard Guyon to charge with bayonets towards the enemy-occupied scrubland. Despite taking heavy fire, Guyon's battalion successfully captured the thicket before being met with a fierce counterattack by Major Terbuhovic's 2nd Ogulin Militia Battalion, leading to a prolonged and violent exchange. By 11:30, Hungarian outposts located in the centre reported that the Croats had already infiltrated Pákozd, with Jelačić's Schmidl Division leading the charge. The Croatian artillery wing, then opened a heavy barrage of fire against the Hungarian centre, causing the 1st Honved Battalion to retreat after suffering 2 direct hits. Móga, the Hungarian commander, responded by relocating an artillery battery to higher ground and firing at the Croats advancing beyond Pákozd. He also moved several infantry battalions stationed in the rear to support his artillery on the right wing, while using hussars as scouts on the left wing to assess the size of the Croatian army. Despite heavy artillery and musket volleys, the hussars did not suffer significant casualties. On the right wing, Major Reznicek led the 3rd Battalion of the 3rd Ogulin and 4th Slunj Border Guard regiments. Captain Bogunovic led the 2nd Battalion of the 7th Broad Border Guard Regiment, and Lieutenant Lonkar led the 3rd 3-pound Infantry Battery as they climbed the heights to encircle the Hungarian forces. Kempen, with a battalion formed from the 3rd Battalions of the 3rd Ogulin and 4th Slunj Border Guard regiments, launched repeated attacks into the forest to weaken the furthest right wing of the Hungarian army and divert their attention, thus ensuring the success of the encirclement. Both sides hesitated to initiate combat, but by 2 p.m., a Hungarian aide-de-camp named Major Count Antal Szapary approached Kempen's lines with a ceasefire proposal. Although Kempen was receptive to the idea, the Hungarian artillery interrupted the conversation with a massive barrage. Kempen retaliated, and any possibility of a ceasefire was abandoned. In the centre, an hour-long artillery duel ensued, while the Croatian vanguard advanced towards the Hungarian positions through the vineyards. Hungarian infantry stationed above the vineyards waited until the Croats were within range to open fire, causing significant casualties. Despite the Hungarian forces' resistance, the Croats continued their advance. Meanwhile, Jelačić and his entourage met with a lieutenant of the 9th Miklos Hussars Regiment at a nearby farm to negotiate a ceasefire. However, their efforts were in vain, and Jelačić rode to the vanguard to assess the situation and motivate his troops to attack. On the right, the Hungarian 60th Wasa Infantry's 1st Battalion attacked the Croatian battalion in the woods. The 1st 6-pounder Infantry Battery provided supporting fire, and the Brod Battalion retreated down the valley. The battery's first volley caused significant casualties among the Croatian troops. The battalion ultimately retreated from the height, and the Hungarian battery began firing cannonballs at the Croatian baggage wagons on the highway from the valley. They retreated in haste towards Pákozd. Here, the baggage train ran into a half-battalion of the National Guard commanded by Major Ferenc Vigyázor. They had been unable to link up with the main army and now attacked the baggage train. The Croats fled, leaving behind a baggage wagon losing valuable maps, ammunition, and weapons. The 3rd 3-pounder Infantry Battery, led by Lieutenant Lonkar, intervened and caught the Hungarian battery in the crossfire, forcing it to retreat and abandon its position due to the lack of ammunition. The Hungarian units suffered heavy losses from enemy fire. Heavy fighting had been raging in the centre for some time, and it was evident that the Hungarians had the upper hand, driving the Croatians back and holding the strategic high ground. Despite launching 3 charges, the Croats could not prevail. During the 3rd charge, the Hungarian artillery inflicted severe damage on the Croat lines, leaving them in disarray. However, 2 Croatian battalions had managed to advance towards the plateau without much resistance until Major Miklos Percel and his 4 companies of the Tolna Volunteer National Guards intervened. After a brief exchange of fire, the Croatian troops fled. Around 4 p.m., Milpok ordered a general attack on the right wing. However, when the vanguard advanced, the Saracenes, led by Lieutenant Vlasavljevic, misinterpreted the Hungarians' intentions and thought that they were surrendering. At the same time, the Hungarians believed the Croatians wanted to surrender, and as they approached each other, a misunderstanding ensued. The Croatians seized their rifles and attacked the Hungarians, killing 35 of them and taking 1 lieutenant and 12 privates prisoner. According to a Hungarian source, this was not an accident, but a trap set by the Croats to lure the Hungarian battalion into surrendering and then massacre them. Despite the setback, the Hungarians maintained the upper hand, driving the Croats back and causing them to flee. The Hungarians advanced so fiercely that they forced the attackers to retreat as far as Pákozd, almost pushing them into the lake. The Croatians retreated from the center after taking continuous hits from the Hungarian artillery. Jelačić, still unaware of the situation on the left, had no idea where Hartlieb's division was. Eventually, an officer was sent from the Croatian side waving a white handkerchief, signaling a desire to stop the firing. Ivanka replied that he was not the commander-in-chief and sent an aide-de-camp to Móga, while engaging in conversation with the Croat officers. Reportedly, a Hungarian artillery battery opened fire on the Croats, leading them to disarm and capture Ivanka. By 3 p.m., the fighting had stopped everywhere, and Jelačić shifted his focus to the defensive. In the rear, some unruly Croats engaged in a wild sheep hunt, while others looted the village of Pákozd in revenge for their lost baggage wagon. However, actual fighting had ceased. The first battalions of the Hartlieb division arrived late in the afternoon, with the 1st Battalion of the 3rd Ottokak Border Guard Regiment being the first to arrive, and the rest of the division arriving only after dark. For the number of troops participating in the battle, the casualties were surprisingly light. The Croats lost approximately 190 men, of whom 49 were killed. The Hungarians lost a similar number, though no official figures are known. He runs away from his own victory, János Móga. The first clash of the Hungarian War of Independence had a questionable outcome. However, it set the stage for the conflict to come. Events transpired in Budapest, where the new military commander and provisional Palatine of Hungary arrived on September the 25th, 3 days before the battle. It would lead to all-out war. Thank you very much for watching this video. Please leave a like, it really helps out the channel. If there is a topic, battle or person you would like to know more about, let me know your thoughts in a comment. I would also like to thank all my patrons and channel members for their generous support. If you enjoy House of History and you want to support my work, consider joining me on Patreon. For just $1 per month, you will already gain early access to all my videos without any in-video advertisements. Don't forget to subscribe. See you next time.